Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Orex Minerals, which is a junior mineral exploration company with a portfolio of large gold, silver, and copper exploration projects on prominent mineral trends in Mexico and Canada. In Mexico, it is advancing the Coneto project with JV partner Fresnillo, as well as the Sandra project with JV partner Pan American Silver. And in Canada, it owns a 100% interest in the jumping Josephine Gold Project. Orex is part of the Belcara Group, which is led by a strong roster of professionals that have a track record of identifying and advancing exploration projects. Today, I have with me on the webinar Ben Whiting, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer at Orex Minerals. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Ben will provide an update on Orex, and then in the second part, we'll take your questions live. So please send us your questions using the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can. And I'll note that you can type in your questions at any point throughout the presentation. To start, we'll handle the disclosures and then get into it. So for Orex Minerals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Orex corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Orex Minerals specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Ben to update you on what you have to look forward to with this story.
Thank you very much, Taylor. And if we could bring up the slide deck, that would be great. So here we are. Today I'll be talking mostly about the projects in Mexico. The project in British Columbia is available for possible joint venturing, and we have been discussing that as well. But I'll concentrate on today the Mexican projects. There will be some forward-looking statements, as I've already made one, that the Jumping Josephine project in British Columbia is available for potentially a joint venture or a sale on that project. We do advise people to take a look at forward-looking statements because they may change at different times. Now, it was mentioned by Taylor that we're part of the Belcara Group. It's a management team that has been formed over the years and has a variety of technical and financial specialists in the mining industry, and we've done it before. We've created companies, we brought them to the market, we've made discoveries, and we've sold companies as well for profit of the shareholders. A key example we're quite well known in Mexico for is the La Preciosa silver gold deposit in Durango, Mexico, which our team was chosen as Explorers of the Year in 2008 for the IAC 2008 trophy, which sits on my shelf right now. So it's great to be working with a team of people who have the abilities and the wherewithal to move a project. Orex Minerals has a history, and it has been one of the companies where we created other companies. One thing that I'd like to point out is one asset that was not mentioned is that Orex holds a 2% net smelter return on the Barsele gold deposit in Sweden. It seems like a strange fit, but at one time Barsele was a part of Orex, and the shareholders benefited by us creating two companies and putting the shares out to the existing shareholders. So they ended up with an asset base in Scandinavia and a separate asset base in North America. The company itself today within Orex has a strong institutional following. Ingalls & Snyder out of New York, US Global out of Texas, and Eric Sprott in Toronto are three of the examples of the institutional holdings that we have. There are other institutional holdings as well, such as the Contrarian Fund in California. These are groups that have invested in various projects that we have. Fresnillo, as a corporation, the largest silver mining company in the world, does hold a 3% interest in Orex, and that's through one of the joint ventures that we've done. Management gets involved in the financings and shareholder position as well. It's about 15% currently on the shares. If they talk about buying low and selling high in the markets, that's what I would suggest is a good time for Orex, because we are at the lower part of our share price, that the 52-week high and low is between 2 cents and 10 cents. And so we're currently priced at around 3 cents a share. This is the time to buy, actually. So 3 projects I'll be mentioning, primarily the first 2 projects on here. The Coneto project is the joint venture with Fresnillo, the world's largest silver mining company, and the Sandra project is silver with some gold and base metals at different parts of the project, and it's with Pan American Silver Corporation, and they are the world's second largest silver mining company. Where they're located in the Mexican space is right in the heart of the silver trend. And Durango is one of those states that's not on the coast, it's on the Altiplano or the Mesa Central of Mexico. So it's at about 2,000 meters elevation, 6,000 feet up. And the silver trend of Mexico, with some of the world's largest silver deposits, passes right through that section. To the southeast, you've got the state of Zacatecas, which is where Fresnillo's flagship operation is. And the Zacatecas mining camp, just to the southeast of that, is also another huge silver mining camp. Pan American Silver's big operation in Mexico is Colorado. And La Colorada is located just to the southeast. La Parrilla is First Majestic's, one of their first operating mines that they have in that area. Hecla Mining was at San Sebastian. As you move further to the north, you'll see the town of Guanaceví, and that's up near our Sandra project, and that's Endeavor Silver. And it's Sandra's between Guanaceví and the Tovar mining camp, but also to the east of it is La Pitarrilla. And La Pitarrilla was Silver Standard, which became SSR Mining, and Endeavor Silver have picked up La Pitarrilla. You can see where La Preciosa is. It's right in this state as well. That was one we sold to Coeur Mining, and so it's one of our discoveries. Avino Silver and Gold have recently purchased La Preciosa because their operations are right across the valley from La Preciosa, and it makes sense for them to be having that kind of an operation. And the Coneto project is just to the north of Avino and the El Castillo gold mine. So you can see we are in a mineralized belt through here with some of the great deposits, and that's where our exploration is. We'll start in the Coneto area. Coneto is ranching country. Most of Durango is ranching and some farming up in that area. This is the village of Coneto. Where I'm standing here, I'm on the property, and where you can see the hillside on the horizon, that's La Bufa. When we talk about La Bufa zone, that's right on La Bufa. It goes an equal distance beyond La Bufa, heads up towards the northwest, and it goes just as far behind me in this photograph. So we're just looking at the kind of terrain that it has a traditional mining camp setting in this location. So there are communities here, and we get involved and have local employment for some of the small villages in these areas. So the Coneto mining camp is a window of the lower volcanic succession, where it's surrounded by upper volcanics. The pinkish area is the rhyolites of the upper volcanics. Many of the traditional mining camps and the epithermal vein systems are hosted in the lower volcanics and sometimes penetrate into the basal units of the upper volcanics. It's about 17 kilometers northwest to southeast, about 4 kilometers wide, and within there are 40 to 50 major structures or veins that have been documented. We have 98% of this mining camp, and it's a beautiful window of the kind of geology that it hosts many deposits. On field tours to this project, we can actually drive in and put our hand on that time correlative horizon right on the road cut on the south end of the property, that we can touch that major event in the geology of Mexico. This is what it looks like in some of the veins that are outcropping. The project itself, we have roughly 4,800 hectares of mineral concessions. This mining camp goes back over 450 years of mining history, yet there are parts of the district that remain underexplored by modern methods. We've drilled about 12 of the structures in this camp, and we have enough drilling for a resource that's come out on 6 of the structures. So it gives you a sense for where our priorities lie. Fresnillo has spent over $6 million to earn their 55%. Is Fresnillo the right kind of partner for this kind of project? That's something as a forward-looking statement we may be looking at, because they are such a large company that this may be better suited for a mid-tier silver mining company, and we can get into that subject a little bit later. But Fresnillo is open to consideration for that. SRK Consulting completed the first National Instrument 43-101 resource on this project. Give you a sense for some of the types of drill hole intercepts. These are all vertically oriented epithermal veins, and you can see that we have gold and silver. By value, it's roughly half and half. The historic mining only took it down roughly to the water table on a couple of the structures, and that's because of the technology of the time. But you can certainly go a lot further down now, and we are finding that the system is intact. You can see some of the depths. The Santo Nino hit with some high-grade gold and silver was almost 400 meters down the drill hole, so 300 meters vertically below surface. And that is well beyond any of the mining that had been historically done in the top, say, 70 meters of these projects. The same happens in Loma Verde and Durazno Alto. The Durazno Alto is a fault-dropped block right in that part of the camp. And you can see that some of the intercepts there are also down in the 300 to 400 meters. Metallurgical work was also done for this resource estimate. Excellent metallurgical results. Here we've got 5 of the 6 zones came out with average of 93% recovery for gold. One zone is a slightly different mineralogical setting, and it may be evaluated further, but it was still releasing gold at the 96th hour of the metallurgical test in the leach tests. Silver is also recoverable, and here averaging in the 80% silver recovery. And the silver lines were still positively climbing, which means that they were still coming out of the solution with that cyanide testing. So Coneto diamond drill core, and what the resource is based on is 106 drill holes for a little over 38,000 meters and 12 targets. So it's all diamond drill core, so beautiful quality samples that have been done on this project. The Coneto diamond drill core at the shallower ends looks more like this, where you've got some surface oxidation in the 50 to 100 meters. And just to give you an idea of the kinds of grades you can get, this is the Loma Verde project, or that part of it, the Loma Verde structure. And you can see that gold and silver both play a part in this drill core in the oxidized zone. As we move down to a deeper material, you're in the sulfide mineralization. And this is beautiful mineralization. The geologists who are exploring and looking at this style, they see that the fluids were boiling at this part. So boiling textures, the fluids can no longer carry the metals and they fall out. This is the highest grade sample that we have from the diamond drill core, and you can see 38 grams of gold, 4,990 grams of silver per ton. It also has copper, lead, and zinc credits. You can see the galena for the lead, the brownish parts are sphalerite for the zinc, and the brassy looking material is chalcopyrite. So you're moving from surface where you've got gold and silver, you go gold and silver base metals, and these will eventually have a base metals root. So the classic zonation in these vein systems. So the 6 zones that are on the property, they go from northwest to southeast, and there are some that are Loma Verde tends to be more north-south oriented. They're the ones that we've drilled sufficiently to put a resource on. Here's the resource. If you think in terms of gold equivalent, this first resource has 538,000 ounces of gold equivalent. If you think in terms of silver equivalent, this first resource has 40 million ounces of silver equivalent. So roughly half and half gold and silver by value. So a very good start to building the resources at that size. Moving northward, moving into an area that's the joint venture with Pan American Silver is called the Sandra Project. I see that I have a typographical error in the name for the Sandra Escobar Caldera. I'll fix that one. But Sandra Escobar Caldera, in the southeast part of it, has a hillside. And that hillside, I want to point out the green dot that's right in the center here. That's the diamond drill rig on the center of that. And that diamond drill rig, on that hillside, there are 64 drill holes. So we're very careful how we lay out. We use man-portable rigs. We bring them in, make little skidder trails for the ATVs and supporting the drilling. But we're very conscious about the environment and to make sure that for the ranchers that everything is maintained very soundly. It's a 60-40 joint venture with Pan American Silver, located just outside, about half an hour from the town of Tepehuanes in northern Durango State, and it's nearly 7,000 hectares in the area of that district. So on this, in the southeast part of the project is the area of the Belarus discovery. That's the block that has the Belarus. If we go a little further to the north, there's a small artisanal mine called Mina San Francisco, and that mine has a different style of mineralization, and it shows a higher temperature end member. So where Belarus I'll describe as a lower temperature epithermal silver deposit, we're seeing more silver and gold as we move to the northwest from the Belarus and heading up towards the San Francisco. We're seeing a change in the mineralogy, and that change is something that tells us about origin of the fluids. So elsewhere, we do have some gold studies on the central part of the property. This particular stretch, the Santo Nino, Rosario, Paola area is a place where we've done some drilling and we're finding some anomalous gold and silver. How that fits in, we're still working on it. And to the south, we have the Maria Fernanda zone that sits in through here, and it's on the flanks of a granitic intrusion, and it shows a somewhat different mineralogy in there. So the whole camp has some very interesting targets to be worked on. We haven't drilled Maria Fernanda in the most recent studies that we've done, but that it also has copper values in that part of the project. Okay. So the Belarus deposit, low sulfidation, lower temperature, just silver that we're seeing there. And these are some of the drill hole intercepts. It's right at surface. You can see that the first drill hole that we put in 2015 was from 1 to 62 meters, and it was 61 meters intercept, 43 meters true thickness of 359 grams of silver per ton. So that deposit sits right at surface. This was a discovery that Orex made with the then joint venture partner Canicil Resources. Canicil Resources has since been bought out by Pan American Silver for this project, and Pan American added their claims to the project. The resource estimate is 33.3 million ounces of silver, so not a silver equivalent, but just a silver in this at surface, potentially open pit deposit. When I say potentially open pit, that's a forward-looking statement, but the geometry looks like this. These are a couple of cross sections through the deposit. It outcrops on the side of the hill. Potential stripping ratio would be less than a 1-to-1 stripping ratio. Now, what we do see here as well is the style of mineralization is not your typical sulfides in this particular location. In fact, there's no gossan on the hillside, and that's why it wasn't discovered in the past. It looks like a piece of concrete. So you look at the upper left image, the drill core looks like concrete, but that sample grades 254 grams per ton silver within a crystal lithic tooth, and this lithic tooth tended to buckle. And when it was cooling and buckling, where it buckles, you get stringers, and these stringers look like the lower left there, where you get amethyst as the last phase of quartz coming in with some high-grade silver. That's 1.2 kilograms of silver per ton in that sample. But these are some examples. What you've got is silver that's in a little bit of native silver, no problem. You've got silver halides, bromargyrite and chlorargyrite. There's the silver salts. Those are fine. Then you've got some silver manganese minerals. Those will take some more studies, and that's what Pan American will be looking at, is the manganese oxides and hydroxides that carry silver. They have more background in the metallurgical studies, and so they will be taking that part of the project. So this is what the Sandra Silver Gold Project looks like as the vista, where the truck is right on the Belarus deposit. As you move towards the Red Hill, you find that you get more gossans over in that area because you're moving into higher temperature and you're moving into sulfides. So by comparisons, I say that the forward-looking area, the foreground, looks a lot like Lapidaria's Cordon Colorado zone. And as you move towards the Red Hill, that may be similar to Breccia Ridge at Lapidaria as an analog for these kinds of mining. And Lapidaria is about 75 kilometers to the east of this location. So similar geological type setting. Lower left is that little artisanal mine where they were hand cobbing the shiny bits and sending it directly to the smelter. So they had very high grade silver that was coming from some silver sulfides on a very small claim that's internal to the. So just briefly for the Jumping Josephine in British Columbia, it's up towards Castlegar, for those people that know your Kootenay district of southwestern of British Columbia, southern British Columbia. It has a resource estimate as a nice little plum, has not been explored extensivly beyond the original Jumping Josephine, but it is certainly of interest, and it's about 64,000 ounces of gold sitting close to surface. So mineral resource summary, these are the numbers for silver and for gold for the three projects, whether it be indicated or inferred resources. The Orex share is a share of individual joint ventures, and so our share of the resources comes to about 36 million ounces of silver equivalent, and sometimes it's gold in the case of Jumping Josephine. Coneto's gold and silver, and Sandra's purely silver play. They all have 43101 reports that are available for consultation. So community is very important, and it always has been. ESG is one of those phrases that you hear going around these days. It's environmental, social, and governance. Well, we've been practicing community engagement and sound environmental practices for decades within the individuals and the companies that we've created over the years. What you can see on the left-hand side is where we're working with the school children and planting trees in the schoolyards so that they take possession and involvement as well. And the older children were digging the holes, and the younger children were planting the trees that are suitable for that environment. And so that's part of engagement with the community. The ranchers at this time of year as well like to have their presas or their small dams up to proper standards so that before the rainy season hits, they can capture the water that they'll need for their ranching purposes. This is a presa that's on the Sandra project, the image that's on the right. A typical presa, and so we supported them in repairing these as part of our community engagement. So the Orex current activities, we have excellent metallurgical test results and a maiden resource on the Coneto. SRK Consultants recommended a $6.4 million US program for going forward on that project. Sandra, we did a 2022 drilling program, was completed. 2023 planning is underway, plus some scientific testing, which is what Pan American will be doing. Continuing with the social engagement before the rainy season comes. And we are also looking at other property submissions in the region because there are opportunities to be had. A lot of interesting projects in this area with our team that know the region. And so that's really key for Orex Advantage in this area. So 3 projects currently, good joint venture partners, established presence. We've had an office in Durango State for about 17 years, strong technical team, and I think that there is more to be discovered. And that at that point, I thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to Taylor.
Great, thanks a lot, Ben. That was a great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions in at any point. So to get things started, just wondering on Coneto, just, are there, obviously very broad epithermal system, is there any evidence of kind of the source intrusion or porphyry nearby, or, any leads on that or anything, or?
We haven't found a source intrusion, but we have seen that there are differences in the andesites, so phases in the andesites, and there may be a source And I think that it would be associated with an andesite that is more magnetic. There's an earlier andesite event that's hosting some of the veins, and veins that cross right into the later andesite event. And I think that most of the mineralization came out during the time of the regional rhyolite event for that upper volcanic succession, because some of the veins actually come into the basal unit of the rhyolites. Just to the immediately to the north of about 5 kilometers to the north is Cerro Prieto, and Cerro Prieto is a small gold operation, and it was in the basal unit of the upper volcanic succession. So yeah, it's an interesting project. If you remember your classroom structural geology classes and the Riedel shear zone concept of how the veins are positioned and move, that um, right lateral strike slip motion was happening through this camp.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Just wondering on the metallurgical knowledge you have of again the Coneto project. What testing has been done, if any?
On the Coneto project, we did 7 tests, and 6 different zones were tested independently. And on the Loma Verde, which has oxidation zones, so there was a separate test on the oxide and a separate test for sulfide. So that had 2 tests on it. The other tests were primarily on sulfide mineralization. When the resource was done for under Fresnillo's guidance, they used Fresnillo's cutoff. It's not a grade cutoff, but a dollar cutoff of $74.15 was their cutoff, because that's a corporate. You know, they're looking at this kind of a deposit, and each of those zones. So the grade was based with the metallurgical recovery that they had for each zone. So if it was the Santo Nino, it used the Santo Nino metallurgical test. If it was Loma Verde, it used the Loma Verde metallurgical test, and Durazno and Promontorio. So in that way, when people often will ask, well, what was the cutoff grade used? Well, it really is vein dependent as to how they wanted SRK to do it. So.
Yeah, a bit of a jumble there. Okay. We have a question here. It's come in. Just wondering, are there any political or security concerns for you in terms of the territory you operate in?
We haven't had any concerns there, and we've been very welcomed by the community. We do have agreements with ejido councils, so they're the farmers' collectives that are in the area. When you think about security in Mexico, the news that I've been hearing lately has been along some of the major transportation corridors, and it was in Zacatecas state. Durango itself has not really had any problems in the past 10 years. And so we're quite familiar with the area. We also have a local office and local team. So when I go down there, one of my technicians will be traveling with me when we go out to the site, and he's very familiar and knows a lot of the people who are around there. So I find as a geologist or an engineer heading into an area, it's been very safe for us. Mostly the people want us there, because even if you were talking to somebody that wasn't on the right side of the law down there, they would rather have some bona fide business and enterprises in their area rather than it just being cartel country. Um, this is not a great growing area for any of the drugs as well. So that if you're thinking about poppy fields, no poppy fields whatsoever in this area. There are some bean fields, some corn, so the maize and frijoles, but it is not a drug raising area because it's too open. It's too much of an area that you can have the army driving through on one of the roads and be able to see what's happening in the area. Most drug planting is done in the high Sierras, and it's in places that are not as accessible. So the accessibility is a real bonus here. That it's 2 hours drive from the city of Durango, capital city of a state with 800,000 people and an international airport. So it does have some real advantages. And security is always something you keep in mind, but here I don't see it as being an issue at all.
Great. Okay. And just expanding on that, I know we talked about Mexico as a jurisdiction not too long ago. Maybe just kind of if you want to outline your thoughts on Mexico and why it's a great place to be operating in addition to what you just mentioned.
If you look at it almost like a geopolitical analysis, you see that as well coming out. It's like the Peter Zeihan presentations that are on YouTube, and he looks at the world at large, and for the next generation, especially for the next 10 years, North America is the number one region he sees going forward. And he also says part of that is because of the interaction between the United States and Canada as being more evolved economically as far as the demographics goes and the training goes, but with a younger and very energetic population in Mexico, and the interaction with the trade agreements within the three countries make Mexico one of the best trading partners the United States and Canada could ever have as far as matching with the capabilities of the three countries together. So the future of Mexico is great. As far as tremendous exploration potential, some of the best deposits are in this area. If you're looking at silver, the silver production, a majority of silver production, maybe a little over half, comes byproduct of other mining operations. Lead and zinc mines, gold mines, they'll have silver as a byproduct. But silver as a primary product, Mexico is certainly the place to be. As far as the future of electronics, the electric vehicle productions, there will be more coming out of that. It consumes silver from photovoltaic cells, the solar panels. Silver is it has surpassed a lot of the other uses for silver in the solar panel production. And that's something that I don't see slowing down. It's something that I see happening more and more. It won't be throughout every location, but there will be great solar panel places in New Mexico and Texas and California and Nevada, and places that get a lot of sun. Then solar fields of electrical generation will be what they'll be powering those electric vehicles as well. And so storage capacity, battery technology, these are all things that you're familiar with, the other companies that you're covering as well. But silver will play a very important part of the next decade of production.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think it's very underappreciated, its role, particularly with kind of the green energy transition and all that narrative as well. Okay, I guess before wrapping up, maybe if you can just outline kind of the bigger catalysts on the horizon and what's in the works coming up for Orex.
Yeah, I'm planning a trip, so there's a forward-looking statement. I'm planning a trip down to Mexico to join with my team and spend a little more time with them. We've got some property submissions, so that comes under the project submission side. But we have also been discussing with Fresnillo the next step forward. The next step forward will probably be a sale or a creation of a new kind of joint venture there, to place it either with an active exploration company to come in and take more of Fresnillo's role, because they see it as a valuable asset. So they have it there, but we don't want to sit on it. And it's not as high on their operational list. So which mines are they going to put into production next? You know, it would be quite a ways down on their list. They're working with Mag Silver and the Juanicipio project in Zacatecas, and so there are lots of things that are on their plate. This just happens to be a very nice asset, and as negotiations go, I have an agreement that they will entertain potential offers. And that's something that we've been working on this past year, is to get them to the point. They're a very talented group. They have very good skill sets on the technical level. From a big company viewpoint, they move relatively slowly by comparison to junior mining companies. And so that was something that was a bit of a frustration over the past year, why we haven't got as much headwind, or it's wind in our sails rather than headwind, wind in our sails because of how these negotiations work. We're going to find the right fit for the project. And the right fit for the project that the Coneto project could just fly.
Right. Okay. So things to look forward to on the corporate side there. Okay. Excellent. So I think that's it in terms of questions. So I think we'll wrap up there. I would like to thank Ben from Orex Minerals for taking the time to host the webinar today with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.
Thank you very much, Taylor, and best of success to the whole team at Red Cloud.